So yesterday we had the vote on who will be Speaker of the House, and I regret to inform you, Nancy Pelosi is keeping her Speaker role. Now, there was quite a bit of drama that unfolded in real time because it appeared like, in the moment, Barbara Lee, Cori Bush, and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez all voted against Pelosi as Speaker because their names were called and there was silence. Turns out that that's not how it ended up because there's some rules, arcane rules bullshit where at the end of it, after they called everybody's name, apparently all three of them, Barbara Lee, Cori Bush, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, all voted for Nancy Pelosi. So when we thought they didn't because when their names were called, there was silence, but then they came in late and they voted for Nancy Pelosi. Now, Pelosi was elected Speaker by a vote of 216 to 208 with only 5 Democrats defecting. You have Jared Golden, who voted for Tammy Duckworth, Connor Lamb voted for Hakeem Jeffries, Mikey Sherrill, who voted present, Alyssa Slotkin, who voted present, and Abigail Spanberger, who voted present. Of those people, I believe the only Medicare for All supporter, so the only one you could call like nominally on the left who opposed Pelosi from the left, is Jared Golden. He's a Medicare for All supporter, and he voted for Tammy Duckworth. That means, the entire Congressional Progressive Caucus, all of the Justice Democrats, all supported Nancy Pelosi. And actually, I'm sorry, it says right underneath there, the final tally was not 216-208, it was 216-209. Okay, anyway, so, well, what's Nancy Pelosi going to do now? Well, don't take my word for it. Take the word of Tim Ryan, who's actually very similar ideologically to Nancy Pelosi, even though last time he tried to mount a challenge against her for him to become Speaker of the House. Here's what Nancy does moving forward.
But we're not here to, in any way deep six the Democratic Party. I think Joe Biden is the new brand for the Democrats, which is really good because he appealed in Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. So he helps us address some of those concerns that we've had.
Is there anyone you know of who will be challenging her in a legitimate challenge come tomorrow for the speakership?
Not that I heard of. So the real choice is between Nancy Pelosi and Kevin McCarthy. Nancy Pelosi, in her defense, has protected us from some of the more liberal ideas in our party. She's been there to protect us from some of those.
Nancy Pelosi has protected us from some of the more liberal ideas in our party. What he means by that is she's protecting the centrists, the moderates, from Medicare for All, for example. Green New Deal. So what did the Justice Democrats and the Congressional Progressive Caucus get out of this? Well, to be fair, we don't know yet. Were there negotiations going on behind the scenes? Yes, there were. That's a fact. There were negotiations going on behind the scenes. Will we know in due time what they got out of supporting Pelosi? Yes, in due time we will know. Right now we don't know. The only thing we do know is they were able to get a waiver for pay-go when it comes to Medicare for All and the Green New Deal. So pay-go's a rule. The Democrats put it in 2018. They were wrong to do it, but they did it. And in that rule, it basically says anything you spend on, you have to pay for. You have to offset it elsewhere in the budget or, raise the money through new taxes. So that alone kills any sort of progressive legislation. That's what pay-go does. It handcuffs the left up front. So is it a victory to get rid of pay-go? Absolutely. You need to get rid of pay-go. They should have gotten rid of pay-go across the board. Apparently, they only got waivers for the Green New Deal and Medicare for All. Is that a victory? Yes, it's a victory. But then, listen, of course, the next obvious question is, okay, so you get rid of pay-go for the Green New Deal and Medicare for All. Logically speaking, then, you're saying we should have a vote on Green New Deal and Medicare for All, and now we don't have to worry about overcoming more procedural hurdles because we got rid of one of the procedural hurdles, which is pay-go. But funny enough, a lot of people are arguing, no, let's get rid of, let's get rid of pay-go for Green New Deal and Medicare for All, but let's not vote on it yet. Well, then why would you get a waiver to get rid of pay-go? If you're just going to get rid of the waiver and then do what? Nothing? Sit on that? again, I don't want to be unfair. I want to be as fair as humanly possible. And I guarantee you there are things that the Justice Democrats and the Congressional Progressive Caucus got behind the scenes from Pelosi. But the ultimate question is, was it enough? And I'm going to go ahead and guess up front, no, I don't think it was enough. Because first of all, I don't even think they should have gone with the strategy of negotiating behind the scenes and playing nice. Because Pelosi's always going to stab him in the back. They think if they play nice, then maybe in the future Pramila Jayapal or Barbara Lee will become speaker. That's not going to happen. It's going to Hakeem Jeffries 1,000,000%. So I don't agree with the tactic of negotiating behind the scenes anyway. I think it should have been very public. But they didn't do the thing that I wanted them to do, and we don't know what's on that list. I want to see the list and judge it when it comes out as to the extractions that they got from Pelosi. But I can tell you almost certainly it's not going to be enough. My take on it is the exact same as David Sirota's. David Sirota wrote an article saying, yes, hashtag force the vote for Medicare for all, but then also I want Neil off his committee because he could also block Medicare for all. I want to get rid of PAYGO, and I want the waiver that allows the states to implement their own single-payer systems. And I think there was maybe one or two other things that were in David Sirota's article. David Sirota was exactly correct on that. Okay, those are the things you ask for. As of right now, all we know is that they got, PAYGO waivers for Medicare for All and Green New Deal, but we also know that they're actively hostile to the idea of voting on Medicare for All or Green New Deal right now, which really doesn't make too much sense to me. And then they spoke to Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez after the vote because she and Cori Bush and Barbara Lee were the votes that put her over the top, that put Pelosi over the top, because originally they didn't say anything and then they came in and voted for her. So they asked her, hey, why'd you do it? And basically, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, to paraphrase her, said something along the lines of, at a time where you have a president who's undermining rule of law, we should be united in opposition to that, and now's not the time to split the Democratic Party or fracture the Democratic Party. And I have to say, man, I think that's so incredibly naive. Nancy Pelosi, to the extent you actually believe in Medicare for All, Green New Deal, ending the wars, all these good things, Nancy Pelosi is simply not your ally. She's not your ally. As Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez herself said, when you look at Joe Biden in a country that made sense, he wouldn't even be in the same party as Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez would be in, the Social Democratic Party, and Joe Biden would be in the neoliberal party. So, or the, centrist party, whatever you want to call it. So Nancy Pelosi is not your ally. She's not your friend. She's always going to stab you in the back. And whatever concessions you think you got, I almost guarantee you it's not going to be enough. Again, I'll hold my judgment until I see the extractions that they got. Because the other point is, as Ryan Grimm pointed out, the fact that at first Cori Bush and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez didn't support Pelosi. Because at first they didn't support her. What's possible, although again we don't know, what's possible is they were holding out for final concessions from Pelosi, and then when Pelosi realized, I don't have the votes without Barbara Lee, Ocasio-Cortez, and Cori Bush, I will now give in to demand X because I need you to put me over the top. So it is possible they got something we don't know, but I could almost guarantee you it's not going to be enough. It's certainly not David Sirota's idea of all those things, including fighting for Medicare for all during a pandemic. And I do think that this disheartens a lot of the base. Yes, we did put you in there to do a hostile takeover of the Democratic Party. That was the whole point. Do a hostile takeover of the Democratic Party. And, even though I'm not maligning their intentions, they're not sellouts, they take all their money from small dollar donors, they're going to vote the way I want them to vote 98% of the time. You can't tell me that this is a hostile takeover. It's the definition of not hostile. They just supported Nancy Pelosi. And we don't really know what they got for it. So that's not hostile. That's, even though I agree with social democratic policy, I'm going to sort of go along to get along and hope I could get concessions and extractions whenever I get them. But the problem is, and you know this and I know this, is that she's only going to give you crumbs, ever. You have to force her to go beyond the crumbs. And they're simply unwilling to force her to go beyond the crumbs. So listen, on the substance, I think # force the vote was correct. But we should have started it earlier. That's number one. And that's nobody's fault. It just didn't occur to us until later on, and Jimmy brought it up. And I'm sure if you ask Jimmy will say, yeah, I actually should have started this 3 months before. You know, that's point number one, is we should have started it earlier. But the other point is, and I think this is really important, man, is when you're dealing with people who are your allies, and I do not doubt for a second that people who are in the Justice Democrats are our allies, it takes a different approach than when you're dealing with corporate Democrats. When you're dealing with corporate Democrats, I'm with you. Use shame all day long. Call them sellouts because they are sellouts. Call them corporatists because they are corporatists. Tell them, hey, you're my legislative enemy because they are your legislative enemy. But when you're dealing with somebody who agrees with you 98% of the time, that's not the strategy you take. You don't call them sellouts. You don't go after them viciously. You don't treat them like they're a corporate Democrat or they're a Republican, because they're not a corporate Democrat and they're not a Republican. If they would vote the way you want them to vote 98% of the time, there are more constructive ways to get them on our side. So the other thing that we messed up and forced the vote is we didn't start it early enough, but also we went immediately to the bottom-up strategy where all the people get involved and put the pressure on, and that's good, but first what should have been done is, you know, somebody like me, somebody who tangentially knows a lot of these players, we should have reached out to them behind the scenes first and said to them, hey, how about you guys do this idea? You take credit for the idea. You lead this. And in other words, instead of treating them as the enemy from second number one, you talk to them constructively and try to get them on your side to do it. So on the substance of force the vote, I think it was correct. And I just think we should have started earlier, and we should have been put pressure on them, but more constructive in our pressure, like Ro Khanna's interns to Ro Khanna, instead of labeling them the enemy. And, you know, now here we are. We're right back at square one. We don't know all the concessions that were given. I'm very happy that the pay-go waiver is there for Green New Deal and Medicare for All, but what that tells me is, okay, you got the waiver, so now you're for the vote, correct? And I don't think they are, which is incredibly disheartening. So, again, I'm not maligning anybody's intentions. In fact, I really do believe wholeheartedly. I know some of you guys disagree, but I think you're just dead wrong. It is possible to have good faith disagreement on this tactic, and there are plenty of people who don't agree with my approach, who don't think force the vote made sense. I think they mean well. These people mean well. They have a different tactical position. And we need to digest that and now unify moving forward, because I got news for you. Ain't no way in hell we're going to win on anything if from now on we keep going down this path of the left at each other's throats 24/7. I think what everybody needs to do is take a step back, take a deep breath, understand that we're working on things here that are bigger than us. This is bigger than us. This is about saving 45,000 to 60,000 lives per year. You're permitted to disagree with other people inside the movement. You're permitted to strongly disagree with them. You're permitted to talk to them in an open and honest way. But at the end of the day, we need to be constructive and we need to unify around our bigger goals, because if we don't, there's no way in hell we're ever going to win on anything ever again. So all the petty personal stuff needs to be put aside. Okay? All the petty personal stuff needs to be put aside. But let's not sugarcoat it, man. Voting for Pelosi is unacceptable. I fell for the argument in 2018 when they said, hey, there's no further left option. So what are we going to do? She's the furthest left option, so we have to support her. That's what the left said in 2018 when Pelosi was picked for speaker. I don't know if you guys remember what I said there, but I was like, what are you going to do? If nobody else is running against her, you got to do what you got to do. I understand the ones who would ultimately support Pelosi. I don't believe that now. And the reason I don't believe that is this, and I'll end on this point. You had 2 years to organize and do better. So the fact that there wasn't coordination in the Congressional Progressive Caucus, and half of them are useless in the Congressional Progressive Caucus, but half of them aren't. The fact that the Justice Democrats didn't organize and say, you know what, we're going to put Barbara Lee, or we're going to put Pramila Jayapal, or we're going to put Ro Khanna. Ro Khanna has support among the left, but he also has support among more conservative Democrats and even some Republicans, because he's willing to reach across the aisle, like when he worked with Matt Gaetz to try to end the Afghanistan war. Why are you not working on these things behind the scenes 24/7 to try to make it so that you know the next time Pelosi's up, you can mount a credible challenge to her? Make the relationships behind the scenes. Dot all the I's, cross all the T's. Organize. What have you been doing these past 2 years? And the answer is dick. They've been, virtue signaling on Twitter and taking pictures on magazine covers. That's not why we sent you guys there. We sent you there to do a hostile takeover. So do the goddamn hostile takeover. Listen. You need to use the only tool you have, which is the bully pulpit, which is the power of the people. The longer you shun that, the more it becomes inevitable that some of the people who are part of your group are going to turn on you. And that's what we're seeing now. That's what we're seeing. And it almost doesn't matter how much I caution people that, no, she actually agrees with you 98% of the time when it comes to her voting record. Doesn't matter how many times I say that. People aren't going to listen if you don't grow a backbone and fight and do the thing we sent you there to do. We sent you there to do a hostile takeover. We sent you there to use the bully pulpit. We sent you there to get the people involved. It's a movement, not me, us. Remember? They have to start acting in a more aggressive way. They have to start being more constructive. Because guess what? This is not constructive. This is embarrassing, what you got for this. Again, I'll hold final judgment until I see the actual list of concessions. But as of what we know right now, you're rolled over. You're rolled over for somebody who's a giant, corrupt corporatist, one of the most corrupt that there is in D.C., with a horrible voting record, and that's inexcusable. I know, it's tougher when you get to Washington, because you look around and it all becomes so real, and you don't want to be isolated. Well, you should embrace that isolation. As FDR said about Wall Street, I welcome their hatred. What I'm asking for is the Justice Democrats and anybody who really cares on the issues to welcome the hatred, not just of Wall Street, not just of all the donor class, which they do have that hatred already, not just the Republicans, and they have the hatred of the Republicans, but now the corporate Democrats and the media. Lean into the fight. Lean into the fight, because that was the whole theory of change to begin with, but apparently a lot of people didn't get the memo. And my problem was I underestimated leadership. I underestimated how important leadership is. Because I naively thought if you just get people who would agree with me on the policies 100% to be in there, that's enough. But no, it doesn't matter if you agree on all the policies, but you have no strategy to actually get us to the point where we vote on them and play the game of politics to get us there. Leadership is arguably more important. Actually, no, there's nothing more important than policy, let's be clear. But you need to marry a strong leadership role with that, because if you don't, it doesn't matter that you agree with us, because we're never going to win on any of the stuff. So anyway, I hope everybody takes a deep breath. Everybody calms down. Yes, this was a loss. Yes, we need to lick our wounds and move forward. But the important part is we actually move forward with the same goals in mind. And to the extent we have disagreements, let's no longer fucking slit each other's jugulars and watch them bleed out on the ground. Okay? I don't want to hear any more nonsense about other people who deep down are allies and you're treating them like they're not. That's unacceptable. So this was a loss, make no mistake about it, and we do need to pressure them, but let's pressure them constructively, because this is bigger than all of us. There's a pandemic, 350,000 people are dead. 45,000 to 60,000 die every year without a pandemic because of our terrible healthcare system. Tens of millions uninsured. This is bigger than all of us. Let's put all the personality stuff aside, let's stick to policy, and let's strategize in an intelligent way and win. Listen, we were close. The strategy of force the vote is correct. We just needed to start it a little bit earlier and be a little more constructive from the top-down approach first and then use the bottom-up pressure. That's what we needed to do, okay? We failed, but for the love of God, don't become deeply nihilistic and check out, because that's the exact thing the establishment wants you to do.